to know why the bad things in this world jump out at us so much more than the good things, man? It's because the good things are everywhere. The good things are like white noise. We stop hearing it eventually, but it's everywhere. There's a droning under everything, man, and that's the good stuff. The bad stuff flashes up in little explosions, catching our attention. Oh, there's a bad thing. Oh, there's a bad thing. If you realize the fact that there's clouds like this drifting across the sky so beautiful you can lose your day looking at them, that's a good thing, man. The fact that the trees are green, the breeze is blowing, everything is beautiful. Every inch of this world is beautiful and good if you actually take the time to look at it, brother. It's like when you fall asleep watching the TV, you're not listening to the TV, but if someone turns that off, you wake up and you realize you've been listening to it the whole time, man. That's the good things, man. It's so frequent, we stop hearing it. But if you stopped hearing those good things, man, if this world stopped being good like that, you would notice you've been hearing it your whole life in an instant, baby. Just remember that next time your attention keeps getting yanked away by bad things, man.
I've always thought this to be fascinating, and I'm not excluding myself from this conversation. This isn't me being judgmental while talking about this. This is me observing the human experience, realizing that I too am a part of this phenomenon. And that is the phenomenon of being mostly fascinated by negativity and by having a bias towards wanting to watch things that are inherently sad, negative, depressing, and the like. I thought that it would be interesting to just kind of chat it out. I'm going to read some articles while you guys are watching me clean up my entire space. I have a 3-year-old, and no matter how many times I clean this house, by the end of the day, it's an absolute wreck. So I'm going to read a little bit of an article right here, and this one is specifically in regards to the news and sensationalism and negativity and over-exaggerating headlines, why the news even does that, and that's because of us. So it starts off, it always surprises me when people find out that I don't watch the news or read newspapers. A common response is, well, then how do you know what's going on in the world? And my natural response is deep concern. It concerns me that people think the news gives an accurate representation of what's going on in the world. It concerns me deeper that many people make reading the newspaper or watching the news a part of their daily routine. I have never had a reason for not consuming commercial news when I was growing up. I just disliked consuming negative information in general, so I never did. But as I got older, I began to question why the news presented such a lopsided ratio of negative to positive content, and continued still to avoid the news. I wasn't aware of any of the research at that time, and it's been refreshing to learn that there has been some scientific interest in the effects of consuming commercial news on one's happiness. Following this curiosity, I continued to avoid commercial news and still do to this day. The question in my head became, is the news we hear about through our radios and televisions helpful or not to our development as individuals psychologically? There is no news outlet that does not come alongside advertisements. So let's follow this logically. If a company is paying over $300,000 to advertise their product or service to a national commercial, their priority will be to ensure that the most amount of people view that advertisement. The television channel has to prove that they have a high enough viewership to attract these type of clients, so the business thinks they have a chance of making a profitable return. The priority of the television channel, therefore, is increasing the number of viewers. So it's reasonable to suggest that as a result of this motivation, a television channel's content is focused towards attracting more viewers, not producing and showing content that is valuable in and of itself. So I'm going to pause just for a moment. I think that this is very apparent here, specifically being a content creator. You see this time and time again. If you make a video that is extremely negative, is shitting on a company, is dogging on a brand, if there has been a controversy or something that's going on that is ultimately and inherently negative, the views skyrocket. This is just a known fact on the back end with content creation. You're well aware of the fact that negativity creates buzz, which creates hype, which creates views. Not only do content creators know that, the news knows that as well. So let's keep reading. The solution to attracting high numbers is actually very, very simple. Sensationalism. Sensationalism is perfectly defined as the use of exciting or shocking stories or language at the expense of accuracy in order to provoke public interest or excitement. In the internet age, we now know this as clickbait, a title of an article or video that you later find out was clearly just to get you to click on the blog post of the video and has very little to do with the substance of the content itself. News is similar in a way. The over-exaggerated headlines often begin with breaking news. So then the question becomes, how does making news topics sensational attract people's attention? There's a part of our brain called the amygdala. This tiny segment at the center of the base of the brain is responsible for the processing of emotions and our survival instincts. In our ancestry days, paying attention to the elements of our surroundings that could pose a threat to our survival was acutely worth paying attention to. This results in heightened emotions and attention. So if the weather was nice, the sun was out, and some harmless animals passed by, and a roll of tumbleweed was the only thing moving within a mile radius, you wouldn't need to pay as much attention at all. Therefore, over time, we developed an increased desire to pay attention to the negative and negate the positive. Welcome to commercial news. This is exactly why, by some estimates, we have 17 negative news reports for every one positive news story. If you drive past 500 cars on the way to work and nothing happens, you barely even notice the cars exist. If you drive past one car that has crashed, chances are you will look. Even though people say they prefer positive news to negative news and that they think the news is too negative in general, when asked to pick news stories to read to conduct eye tracking tests, they pick negative news. The ironic thing about all of that is that the only information you gathered about the world was through the news, and sadly enough, this is the case for many people. There's a content creator that uploaded a video that was positive in nature. It had a positive title and a positive thumbnail, and it got 1/100th of the views that it normally gets. So that creator changed the thumbnail to something negative and the title of the video to something negative. And that same video immediately increased in clicks and in revenue by just changing the title. So people thought they were clicking something negative. This just goes to show, and I saw this happen, that it is extremely common that even on the back end, people know that negativity begets viewership. That's why the majority of the things that you see online are people bitching. The views speak for themselves, and that's why the news capitalizes on this. So we're gonna switch from the news to people. Why we're hardwired for negativity. The negativity bias is our tendency not only to register negative stimuli more readily, but also to dwell on these events. This is known as positive-negative asymmetry. This negativity bias means we feel a sting of rebuke more powerfully than we feel the joy of praise. This psychological phenomenon explains why bad first impressions can be so difficult to overcome and why past traumas can have such long, lingering effects. In almost any interaction, we're more likely to notice negative things and then later remember them more vividly. So as humans, we tend to remember traumatic experiences way better than positive ones, recall insults way more than praise, react more strongly to negative stimuli, think about negative things more frequently than positive ones, and respond more strongly to negative events than to equally positive ones. For example, you might be having a great day at work and then a coworker makes an offhand comment that you find irritating and you find yourself stewing over his words for the rest of the workday. When you get home from work and someone asks you how your day was, you reply that it was terrible, even though it was overall quite good, despite that one negative incident. This bias towards the negative leads you to pay much more attention to bad things that happen and makes them seem more important than they really are. Research has shown that across a wide array of psychological events, people tend to focus more on the negative as they try to make sense of the world. We learn more from negative outcomes and experiences. We make decisions based on negative information more than positive data. It's the bad things that grab our attention, stick to our memories, and in many cases influence the decisions that we make. Studies have shown that negative news is more likely to be perceived as truthful. Since negative information draws greater attention, it also may be seen as having greater validity. And this might be why bad news seems to garner more attention. Chemicals released in anger can feel addicting. This from Psych Central says they really like this website called Anger Mentor. They do a good job at explaining how the dopamine released when angry gets people high and helps them to engage and re-engage in these cycles. It feeds the feel-good parts of our brains. Remember the old parenting wisdom, be careful not to ignore your kid because a child will seek bad attention versus no attention. The same is said to be true for us. It's also familiar. A lot of people grew up in dysfunctional homes within families where addiction and trauma was present. This can create chaos, unclear boundaries, and teach people that engaging in conflict dysfunctionally is the way to behave and live your life. We are drawn to what we know. It's not unusual for people to find themselves in these emotionally loaded scenarios again and again because they are drawn back to this old stuff, and they may not know how to disengage and detach healthfully. If you have something or someone to be mad at, it can help you to disengage with and looking at yourself deeply. So honestly, what can we do about this? Well, I wish I had the answer. I wish that it wasn't this way, but unfortunately it seems to be the case that since the beginning of time, we are hardwired towards looking at things that honestly harm us in some way or another. Because the phenomenon of negativity and everything being so polarizing and so negative and so sensationalized online, people have realized that that's the way forward for content creation because that is the route that works. And when you realize that you don't want to engage in that any further, you start to realize that that is the only way forward for many people. Specifically being in the entertainment industry or for somebody like myself, you realize that if you don't engage in harsh reviews and being brutally honest and not caring who you hurt. People, you leave dead and bloody and dying along the way just so long as you can make a name for yourself as an investigatory journalist, no matter how many friends you lose, or people you leave dead and bloody and dying along the way. Basically, that quote from Zoolander really is the truth. And I find it very interesting that as a casual observer of the way that the internet works and just watching things go on and being a content creator for the last 12 years, you can sort of notice the trends. And make no mistake, We all know this, and some people choose to engage in it and some people choose not to engage in it. Like I said, I'm no stranger to this. I'm no perfect person. I absolutely tend to click on things that make me feel anger, I think, more than I watch things that are just beautiful and calming. But I do notice in myself that I wonder why I do that, and I am starting to self-reflect a little bit more into who I am as a person and what kind of person I want to be and what I want to put out into the world. I think that for myself, as you can see in recent content, I want to put goodness out in the world. I want to put kindness and slow-paced life and no negativity. I want to put out content that is thought-provoking, and it's a different audience, that's for sure. But if you are one of those people, I'm right there with you. That's what I want to start to learn, how to take in that sort of positive, lovely stimuli so that I can retrain my brain not to look for the negative and not to look for the sensationalized headlines. That's really all I wanted to say for today. There's really no reason to say this other than I just been thinking about the fact that we are always looking for danger, now just moved itself into today's day and age with the news and content creation and all kinds of different constant news sources coming at us and the negative news cycle. It's really easy to see a headline and just to believe it at face value. When I think back to my childhood, I remember all of the insults that I was told. I remember where I was standing when I heard them, how I felt. I remember their exact words and the way they looked when they said them to me. I don't think back to the compliments that I was given when I was a kid. I don't think back to all the good things that my parents said to me and instilled within me. I think back to the moments where I felt humiliated and ashamed and bullied and told that I was ugly or that I had a Pinocchio nose or that I was fat or pizza face. My neighbor used to call me Porky. These are the comments that I remember from my childhood. And so that goes to show that this isn't just something that we're taught as an adult. You know, it's not something that we only are hardwired to focus on because we've been told to do this. It's like an evolutionary trait. Like that clip that I showed from Uncle Pappy, it's the white noise around us. There is actually so much good going around us all the time, and we don't even realize it because that one bad instance or that one really negative moment or that one really bad headline we saw can make us feel like it negates all of the positivity that has happened throughout the day. I wish it was the other way around, but unfortunately that's not the case, and here we are. So this is really just a video to talk about that while you watch me clean my house so that I can get something productive done at the same time as having a deep conversation with you guys. I would love to hear from you down below. I find that even all the videos that I've watched today so far have sort of a dramatic undertone. I realize that I quite rarely click on videos that are just happy. This is just to say, I find it really interesting that even myself sitting here questioning it and being like, why do people do that? I'm like, but you're people who has every desire in the world to completely delete social media. And sometimes I think there's got to be a way to have a lot more balance than I do. But I'm trying and figuring out, just like all the rest of you, and just thinking about how the human mind works. I find it so interesting. There's really no answer. What are we going to do about it? I guess we should chat about that in the comments down below. I thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you liked this video, please subscribe. If you didn't, please unsubscribe. And I thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.